This piece is coming along quite nicely. Now, second movement. Having learned about the building blocks of form on episode 20, I'm now emboldened to embrace small forms, such as binary and ternary. Yes, you are, because you've been listening to Music Student 101. And now your hosts, Jeremy Burns and Matthew Scott Phillips.
Okay, we are back, ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome back.
Matt, you had a little, you had a pretty busy week or two.
Oh yeah, well this was the first week back to classes for me and for colleges around the nation and the world, and crazy time.
Did you say you put in a 10-hour day yesterday?
Yeah, it was longer than that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it was pretty nuts. Jeremy called me and was trying to discuss some music theory topics with me, and my brain was very done with music theory until it got some significant amount of sleep. So
the theory brain was a screaming.
The theory brain was dead. The theory brain needed rest.
Right. Well, we're back at it.
We're back at it. That was yesterday. I slept. I had some coffee.
We're good to go.
We're good.
I got a lot of music happening today, man. When we're done here in a little bit, Brian Malloy, my drum player, and Jerry Chapman, my guitarist, are going to come over and help me. It's me and Heather, my wife. We have a 5-year anniversary coming up.
Oh, congratulations!
Thank you. So I'm gonna try and make a little special album for her. Some covers, some of my own original stuff. But
this is why you should date a musician, ladies.
Right.
There are all kinds of benefits.
But
Not monetary ones.
No.
But benefits.
We can spill our soul to you.
We can't do that.
Not so much our billfolds. But it's gonna be fun.
It'd be a short spill.
I'm gonna do like a bluegrass version of Sade's
Make it sprinkle.
By Your Side, and it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Nice.
So let's see. So that's going on, and I think we musicians should, from time to time, use our talents to express our love to those who love us.
Those tireless saints of the music world, our wives, girlfriends, boyfriends, and husbands, and significant others who put up with so much.
I'm sure your dear friend will concur.
I'm sure she would.
It's an interesting lifestyle.
It really is. Back when I was still gigging and things, Fran was always relegated to carrying the bass guitars, one in each hand, back out to the car after the gig, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Well, as long as you're getting the speaker cabinet.
Yeah. I'm a gentleman, also. I got the speaker cabinet. And,
but it had wheels, did it?
Mine did, but the head did not, and the head was easily as heavy.
Right.
As any bass player will attest.
Very good. Well, we have something special today. We have a congratulations.
We do have a congratulations.
Are you ready, Matt?
Yes.
Are you ready, Maestro?
Yes.
And 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Oh, our friends at Musical U and the Musicality Podcast, that was for you. That's their theme music.
Yeah.
Or rather, our theme and variations on their theme.
Our approximation of their theme music that we could pull together.
Exactly. We want to give a shout out to them. They had their 100th episode. This is a little bit after the fact, but it's still pretty fresh. Happened about a week or two ago.
Yeah.
They had their 100th episode.
We were mentioned.
We were actually. Adam Liette contacted us again, and he said he wanted to, as a celebration for their 100th episode, to contact a lot of their guests that they've had and ask them a simple question. What's one thing you've learned that could help musicians to tap into their inner musicality? Mm-hmm. And that episode had about 12 plus fantastic musicians.
Or at least 10 plus and us.
10 plus and us, right. We were featured in this episode too, so if you want to hear our take on it,
yes,
as well as those of many other great musicians, give it a listen, give them a shout, let them know, man. Let them know what they're doing. They're actually really...
Yeah, it's a really great pedagogical tool, I think, that podcast.
Absolutely. So again, we want to congratulate you guys. Give it a listen, the Musicality Podcast.
Indeed.
Now, we have a new review. This is a short and sweet one, Matt. You want to
nice.
take this one?
Boweni?
Boweni.
Yeah, apologies on pronunciation. 5 stars, called as very useful and informative.
What more could you ask for?
Yeah, man, or person of few words. But that's essentially what we strive to be.
Exactly. Now, something else we have is a new Patreon patron that I want to give a shout out to.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, on patreon.com, you can go there and give us like a monthly subscription donation.
As low as $1 a month, right?
As low as $1, and the
For
sky's
the price
the
of
limit.
a cup of coffee.
And hey, the fact of the matter is, if more people keep on doing this, you'll never have to hear sponsorship ads busted into our cool theory sessions.
The more people do this, the less we'll talk about it. So.
You won't have to hear about Audibility or one of those other web services. Not so hip space.
You know, one of those people that require ads.
Yeah. And I use that word because I don't want to get sued by the other ones. Or in case they become friends of ours. You never know what the future's going to bring. But yeah, thanks again, Sammy. Actually, Sammy is a Birmingham native. I've actually known him for a while. This is the first person I know who's donated money to us on Patreon.
That's wonderful.
Sammy's a fantastic guitarist, and he plays some bass, and he's also a composer, and he's working on some pretty cool projects. You can check some of those out. He's, again, Sammy Siraj. That's Sarasa, Serrasa, on SoundCloud. Find some of his music.
Very nice.
Good friend of ours. Thanks again, Sammy. We really appreciate your donation.
Indeed.
Now we have listener mail.
Yay.
We're blowing through this social section a little bit because the last two were like 20 minutes long.
They've gotten so long. Back when 5 people listened to us.
And it's a good problem to have, but I really want to be able to acknowledge as many people as I can.
I really do. Really definitely do.
And read their stories because I like hearing their stories.
We love hearing those stories. We're getting more now, and it's getting to the point where it's taking up a lot of time that you would prefer we talk about theory. Yeah.
Exactly. But again, let us know if that bothers you. It doesn't really bother me that much, but
yeah. Well, we
get
respond to criticism if we've proven anything.
Yeah, we actually could take a little criticism.
We actually
Everyone's
can.
been so nice. Everyone's been so kind.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about our friend Tom Coe. Tom Coe is from the UK.
Very nice.
He's learning how to play the guitar, and he says music is an exciting journey, not a daunting task anymore since he found us.
Oh, that's so wonderful to hear. Of course, he also says he's just about to get into counterpoint. So his opinion may change.
Let me take a minute for some introspect here, Matt.
Okay.
I have many times, I think, kind of dissed counterpoint, or at least had a negative reaction to it.
Me too.
Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, that's not how I really feel. I think it's a beautiful art form. The hard part is the logistics of understanding it. The result is beautiful.
Yeah, it's a lot of rules, and it's hard to talk about learning counterpoint in any meaningful way without sort of becoming a reference to the rule book. It is a beautiful art, and I'm like you. I feel like I diss counterpoint sometimes, mainly because I feel like it's sort of it can. I have this opinion, which I should work on, really, about it sort of being archaic, That's really not true. I mean, it influences everything. Harmony is counterpoint, really, when you really start to look at it. So I diss it too, but you're right. Beautiful art form. Definitely. An understanding of this is what, in many ways, sort of breaks you out of the idea that music is a bunch of chords.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like taking your first step into a larger world. When you start studying counterpoint, you start on that journey of seeing music in a different way. Seeing music is not just one chord after the next, but seeing music as a unified thing that has mechanics to it, and it functions in a way that there's more than just I'll play this chord and I'll play that chord and then I'll play this chord kind of thing. That first step is hard sometimes. Right. That first step is a struggle sometimes because the study of counterpoint is a complex thing. Mm-hmm. But yes, it's a necessary journey to take.
Well, Tom wrote this back in June, so maybe since then he's actually heard our counterpoint episodes. So, Tom, let us know how it went.
Let us know how it went. How do you feel now?
In the meantime, let's hear what Tom has to say, shall we?
Okay, yes. I didn't find music until later in life. Always listened to it, but never played or studied. To give a bit of background, When I turned 30, I had to have surgery to remove a tumor in my neck. The operation triggered an underlying neurological condition that's lifelong and incurable. Wow. I had to give up work and my hobby, which was racing dragsters, and found music filled a hole that had been left in my life. That's the sad sob story part over. It gets better from here. I started really listening to music outside of my normal genres and have discovered so much beautiful and incredible music out there. I didn't realize how sheltered I was. Then I got curious about learning an instrument. That was a daunting task as an adult. I believe you. I'm 32 by now, but always fancied learning the guitar. So I bought a decent starting guitar and quickly found out I have no clue as to what I was meant to be doing.
Meant to be doing.
I found myself a local teacher and started regular lessons and fell in love with it and discovered the passion of learning something which I lacked a little in school. That's wonderful to hear, isn't it?
It's funny. I mean, I was actually studying for this episode, and I found myself kind of enjoying it and hanging on every line. I was like, why am I so into this? In school, I was not into this. I was not doing it. Maybe it was the time clock, maybe it was the pressure, maybe it was the GPA, all those things. But
the time in your life.
The time in my life. The fact that I set out to do this myself.
Yep. But when you can sit back, I found myself really appreciating, and we're going to talk a little bit about forms today.
Yeah.
I found myself really appreciating the complexity of those things later too. Yeah, maybe when I was in school, it was just, I got to make at least to be on this test. So
it's a hurdle.
It was get the absolutely crucial, numerology and label stuff down. But yeah. So anyway, Tom continues. I love the whole idea of podcasts and listen to a lot, so I did a search for music theory, and that's when I discovered you guys. I've listened to them from the first one up to the big recaps so far in 2 weeks. That's intense.
Yeah.
That's intense. And you guys are freaking awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tom. I can honestly say that I've made more progress in the last 2 weeks since listening to you than I have in the last 3 months trying to figure out things from a textbook. Yeah, we read all the textbooks, so you don't have to.
Yeah, buddy.
I have, Tom and everybody else, I have read more theory textbooks than anybody wants to in their lives. So,
yeah.
This is me helping you not have to struggle with that so much. I'm really glad that it's working out. You really have been instrumental, pun intended, in this amazing musical journey I'm on, and I can't wait to see what the future brings. Thank you so much for the kind words. I love to hear this. I love to hear people getting into music and being able to break through that I have no idea what I'm doing. This feels so hard. This feels so complicated. Mm-hmm. There's a struggle there, and maybe everybody has to go through that. But I love hearing about people who can break through that and realize how rewarding it is to get on the other side where you feel like you understand more.
Yeah, and we love the success stories. And
yeah,
Tom has had a success story on a whole other level because life really gave him lemons.
Yeah,
and he took music and made lemonade.
Yeah, isn't that wonderful?
Yeah,
isn't that wonderful?
So hats off to you, Tom.
Indeed.
Well done, sir.
Yes, very nice. Very glad to hear. And feel free to write us more as you continue to progress. We all can't wait to see what the future brings. We all can't wait to see where our music is going to take us next. Even me, who started playing when I was, a little kid, right? All my friends were out playing on the jungle gym when I was inside trying to figure out how a guitar works. And
where to put your finger?
Yeah, right. And even today, I still feel excitement. I still feel like, I could get into this, and I could get really good at this thing, this musical facet of, so yeah, that doesn't go away, and that's good news.
I feel I imagine you probably feel the same if you made it to this episode.
Yeah.
Because today we are going to talk about form and analysis part 2.
Part 2. I Yeah, you may have despaired that we would ever come back to it.
I know, right? It might have been a little too long.
Well, we have some things that we have to cover before we get to this part and things. The same thing will happen with modulations. We did closely related keys. We will do distantly related keys. There's just a couple of concepts we need to get first so that you can understand that.
So y'all just keep on listening now.
Yeah, just keep on. Just trust us. We don't forget anything. Jeremy has a big list.
I do. Let us begin said list, shall we?
Let us begin. So, first, maybe we should just refresh a little bit about what we talked about in part 1. Right?
Yes, and this is all the information that you can gain from episode 20 again.
Mm-hmm.
And then cadences. We talked about cadences.
Mm-hmm,
that was also kind of important as well.
Yeah, so we talked about those specifically in the next episode.
Yes.
Do we remember that number right off the top of our brain?
No, but future Jeremy will find it.
Okay.
It is I, future Jeremy. And yes, to clarify, the episode on cadences would be episode 19, the one right before form and analysis. So, as I return to my whole tone time machine, I bid you sirs a good day. And you might also like to know that you're both still alive.
So thank you, future Jeremy.
Yes, well done, well done. So weird to see myself. I look better in person than I do in the mirror. Okay, yeah, so anyways, let's talk about form.
So first of all, what do we mean when we say form?
Yes.
Music, you may have all noticed, by and large, with just a few exceptions, does not kind of just go on and on and on in infinity, one random thing after the next.
Yeah.
Usually there is some sort of consistent pattern. Whether in lots of rock and roll music where you have a verse and a chorus and then a verse and a chorus and then a guitar solo and then a chorus, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a kind of pattern like that.
Right.
Classical music has different patterns, but it has patterns. Jazz music has patterns. You'll play the main melody, what they call the head.
Mm-hmm.
People will take turns soloing, and then you'll all play the head again. This is a pattern.
Yep.
So what we're really talking about when we talk about form are those patterns and how they're created, how thematic relationships create those patterns, how those themes and phrases coalesce into what we call sections of music, and how those things repeat, and it's a way of talking about music as, sort of in a starting place and then going somewhere else and then coming back,
mm-hmm.
which is what, a great amount of music does, right?
Right.
This is done by use of themes that relate to each other. These themes are demarked by cadences.
Yeah.
Basically, how does that end? If I'm playing around and see, does it end kind of leave you hanging like that?
That did leave me hanging.
I.e. half cadence?
Uh-huh.
Or does it leave you with a sense of finality and a sense of rest,
yes.
as would an authentic cadence?
Absolutely.
Right?
Authentic because it ended with a bass note on the roots and
right, yeah.
The melody ended on the tonic being approached by the leading tone 7.
By the scale degree 2.
2, okay.
Yeah. But it would even be called a perfect authentic cadence, right? Because that melody ended on scale degree 1.
Okay.
Right? Whereas if I had imperfect. Yeah, that was scale degree 3. So landed on a scale degree other than 1. Still a sense of finality, maybe not quite so much as the perfect authentic cadence.
That would be the imperfect authentic.
That would be the imperfect authentic.
Very
cadence,
good.
Yeah. So, and you might have noticed we've already kind of made a little bit of a little tiny form here. Or what did I do?
Mm-hmm.
So where we kind of did a thing and went to here, right? did that thing again and ended here, right? So, or, so over a big background thing, there was kind of a form going on, right?
It kind of had the, I think we made a good parallel in that episode about the question and answer kind of thing.
Indeed.
Or commas versus periods. So what you just heard was the first part would be kind of the half cadence, or the, what would be the antecedent?
Yep.
Or the question. And then the second part, when you finally resolved it, would be kind of the answer, the full cadence.
Right.
So,
or the consequent.
And this is consequent, yes. And then we were talking about, in the same vein of relating these to grammar and whatnot. What is let's go ahead and talk about the smallest musical idea and how these start to add up.
Yeah.
To become periods and sentence,
Yeah, right. Well, what we created there was a nice little parallel period.
Okay.
Right? Meaning that we had two phrases.
That's one phrase. Question. And the answer is yes.
Yeah. So we had a period, meaning that the pedantic way to talk about it is that cadence at the end of the first phrase, a half cadence, was weaker than the cadence at the end of the second phrase, a perfect authentic cadence. Yeah. But what it meant was, like you said, just sort of a question and answer that created sort of in the background, sort of in the long view of things, this motion from. Right.
So two phrases made a period.
Two phrases made a period.
And what makes up the phrases? The motives? Themes?
Yes. Whenever we try to relate music to words, you get into really words and sentences and languages and things. You get into some really fun places for discussion. It's not always a one-to-one relationship.
No. This is the best we can do.
A musical word can be just a single note. That has musical context.
That sounded like a no.
Yeah, right. See, it has a sort of musical context to it. You listen to Buddhist monks chant. They're doing single note. Right. In general, notes, motives. Could be considered a motive that we use a lot.
Like a word. Like a
kind of like a word. Yeah. Or kind of like a sort of subject statement, And then, we kind of expound on that, So that it's kind of maybe the subject of our sentence, and then we have a kind of I'm not completely prepared to defend this argument, but kind of like a maybe a verb kind of thing going on where there's action, it moves, and then we come back with a conclusion, so there's a syntactical grammar going on there.
Dick and Jane went to the store, then Dick and Jane came back home.
Yeah, something like that. Something like that.
Yeah, right. Cool. Okay, so I think I'm going to try and add graphics to this webpage and see if I can pull this off. But we're going to try and describe these graphics as we go, kind of like the bubble diagram.
Yeah.
If possible, we'll
see how it works. To the extent that we can. One of the restrictions that actually I think kind of becomes an advantage of our podcast format is that we have to say most of this.
Yeah.
Right. It challenges us to be purely in dialogue and it helps. I think it challenges listeners to be thinking, not staring at something.
I listen to 90% of my podcasts in my car going 70 miles an hour.
I think we all do.
Down the interstate.
I think that's just like I think if you did a survey of when people listen to podcasts, I think like 90% of podcast listeners will be listening in the car.
So if we can avoid you looking at diagrams.
that would be
we'll try to do that.
Yeah.
For the sake of simplicity and for the sake of just getting it across orally. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let us continue, shall we? I mean, I should say something else though, because let's see here. What's the best way to say this? You know, a lot of complications can arise when analyzing forms. You know, when it comes to different ways to look at things. You know, so we're gonna kind of take this back to the whole laboratory setting that we talked about.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's do that.
So some of the versions you hear might not be full versions of some of these songs, but we're talking about just the theory behind
Some
it.
of these things might be stuff I make up.
Yeah, some of these might be things I make up.
Right.
So let's get into it, man. Binary form.
Binary form. Binary form is very common in quote-unquote classical music, yeah, as a genre. It is also very common in the classical era, meaning the 18th century, roughly the late 17th into the 18th century, the time of Haydn and Mozart and Beethoven. Those are the three big giants, and they were big with this. Also popular in the Baroque periods, largely with the Baroque dances. There were these Baroque dance forms, and these were originally these were court dances, right? So you know, if you're a noble in the hall of Louis XIV, you know, and you come to the Great Ball, you know, you might hear the musicians play an allemande, which is a dance in duple meter,
Nice.
right? Or a courant. You know, which is, you know, and there would be specific steps you would dance to dance the allemande or dance the courant, right? Or you might hear a minuet, which is in triple meter, or you might hear a bourrée or a gavotte, and they all had these special little things that made it this or that. I memorized those at some point for some exam and promptly dumped my short-term memory, but they all had kind of those things. A gigue was usually GUE was generally in compound meter, you know, and it sort of made its way into Ireland and England and Scotland, where it became a jig. Yeah, kind of.
And remained in compound meter, 6/8.
And remained in compound meter. Yeah. So there you go.
I think one day we'll do an episode on all these different forms, dance forms. That'll be fun.
Yeah. That'll require research on my part.
We'll both take the time to be able to research those.
But the big thing about binary form is that they are divided into two sections, and we give those sections names. There's the A section, which comes first. Whatever comes first, call it A.
There you go.
And the B section, which typically comes after that.
So far, so good.
So far, so good. They may be opened, meaning they end not on an authentic cadence or not on a perfect authentic cadence, but on either a half cadence or a perfect authentic cadence in the wrong key. You know, sometimes they'll modulate and end in the wrong key. And when they do that, we also consider it open. Or they may be closed, meaning they end on an authentic cadence in the key that they started on.
Okay.
Fairly simple.
Nomenclature check.
Okay.
So is it easy enough and simple enough just to say that a closed cadence would be resolved, and then open would be unresolved?
Right, yeah. So open is open, and it leaves the music open for more music to happen.
Right.
It's like a we're not done yet kind of thing.
Because we're not considering a half cadence a resolution. It's still hanging in the wind.
No, nothing's really resolved in a half cadence.
Right. Okay,
in any useful way. And even if it's a perfect authentic cadence, but it's in the wrong key, you know, that is also something we consider unresolved, because music wants to get back to the key that it started in, right? So if we modulated to a new key, had a perfect authentic cadence in that key, we're still unresolved. On the surface level, there's some resolution, but on the form level, on the sort of long view thing, you know, we're not done yet.
Yeah. The story has just begun.
Yeah.
Or it's halfway through.
Yeah. So the A section begins with tonic. Not in the tonic note, it doesn't have to, not in the melody, but it begins on the tonic chord, right? Or we have our first phrase.
Open.
Yeah,
Half
and I made
cadence.
that a half cadence this time, legitimately.
Yeah. Second phrase.
Close.
closed because it's
And
authentic cadence.
And this is our A.
A section.
And it will often be repeated.
Okay.
So,
first time. Same material. Other than that nice little dramatic retardando. You could have just copied and pasted those. It was the same.
Absolutely, it is
same
just
material.
It is just repeated. In the score, they'll just have the little repeat sign at the bar. You know, they won't even write out.
Yeah, you'll
new
see
stuff.
double bars at the end of the notation with 2 little dots.
Yeah, and that means go back and repeat.
Go back and repeat.
Yeah, and you know, obviously, we're not focused in this episode on harmonic complexity or anything. You know, that was all at 2 chords. These things, of course, can get very harmonically sophisticated in their moving, but those cadence structures will always be there.
Which is the important thing we're talking about here.
Right.
Why muddy it up with a whole bunch of other crazy notes and
Yeah.
non-chord tones and 7th chords? Let's just keep it
they can
simple.
definitely be there, but the form won't change because of that stuff.
So that was an A section.
That was a closed A section.
What you got for a B section there, Matt?
Well, the B section often begins on some key other than tonic, though it doesn't have to. It doesn't always. But it often will. And that other thing is often 5.
Yeah.
You know, in some form or another. And in fact, a lot of times what happens is the B section will just sort of hang out on 5 a little bit.
Okay.
You know. So if I'm finishing off my, I might do something like. And then it'll, in some cases at least, it'll end by returning to A.
Okay. So what I kind of heard in my head then, even though we're just calling this A and B, so if you look at it on paper, it's A, B, simple. But if you really kind of break it down, it's kind of like A, B, A. Right? I mean...
Yeah, and then BA will also be repeated. So AA, BA, BA.
Okay, A, B, A. And then the B, A, B, A is considered the B section.
Yes.
Yes.
It's considered the second of those 2 sections, even though the A material comes back.
Okay.
So a couple of things to make this less confusing.
Please.
For one thing, repeats typically do not alter form. So even though we played A twice, you know, if we were graphing this out, we wouldn't necessarily write AA.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just A.
Right.
Right? We just played A and then we just played it again. You know, we're not moving to a new section in our form until we move to new material. So typically, repeats do not alter form. So they're there. They can clue us in on what's going on in the form, but you don't have to worry about thinking, well, this is some kind of weird AA, BA, BA kind of thing because the repeats happen. Typically, repeats do not alter the form.
It's already been analyzed.
Yeah, it's already been.
Check.
So there's that. So we have an A and we have a BA.
Yeah.
Right? So, why is this not 3 things? Before we get into that, we should say B is often longer than A.
Aha.
True.
True.
For the express reason that it's got that little bit tacked onto the end. Right? And in fact, when we were coming out of the Baroque and sort of codifying a lot of these forms into the classical period, the A section would be repeated and then the BA section would not. So that you have A, and then BA, and it was sort of proportionally the same length.
Yes, symmetrical.
Yeah, eventually BA starts getting repeated too.
Okay.
But yeah, so B is often longer than A. B normally can consist of a couple of sections in of itself. just like A consisted of two phrases, B can consist of hanging out on 5 and then a return to A, for example, right?
Right.
The first phrase in B is usually the least stable. Like I said, very often what it's really doing is just sort of hanging out on 5. So a lot of times that's what it's doing. It's just hanging out on 5.
Right. Hence the instability.
Yeah, not very stable, not really kind of a thing in and of itself, right? It's just a little digression.
It doesn't seem to want to independently survive or thrive.
Right.
It's like a response or continuation of the story that began in the A section.
Yeah. It's kind of like the verb or something. It can't really. It doesn't really mean anything unless something else is. Yeah. It's not surviving on its own. That's why it needs that return material to A, right? That's why it needs A to sort of round itself off, to resolve and to make a complete thought. So we have an A, we have the statement, which is A, and it gets repeated. We have a digression from A, which is B, and then that digression goes back into A. So, and then we have BA, or BA prime. Sometimes prime meaning that when that A comes back, it may not be exactly the same. Some little thing might have changed. You might have a couple of little more ornamentary notes or something like that, or the melody might be in the bass or something like that. But A repeated, BA prime repeated, and this is a rounded binary form.
Okay.
And this is a binary form,
And then just so you know, the prime is notated by a apostrophe looking.
Yeah.
Kind of hovering up over the A.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. That's actually what we call rounded binary.
Rounded binary. Okay, right. Because the roundedness is the returning of the A kind of.
Is the returning of the A. If you had a B in which there was no kind of A returning, so if I play this thing, I'm finishing up my A section here, and I instead kind of went. So A did not really come back.
No, it didn't.
Right? So this is what we would call simple binary.
Okay.
Meaning there's just A repeated, and then B, which is a digression that eventually resolves on itself, and we don't need A. Mm-hmm. We don't. This is nice and simple. Just an A thing, one thing, and a B thing, another thing. This is what we call simple binary versus rounded binaries when that A comes back.
Okay, yeah. Very good. Then let's see. Let me see if I can play a quick example.
Okay.
I think we decided this was rounded binary.
Half cadence. A section.
Okay.
Parallel period. Hanging out on 5. 5. Return of A. Yes.
So that is actually rounded because it repeats that part of the A section.
Yes, yeah. It needed that A to come back. So we had the A.
Half cadence.
Just got my 5 in the wrong place. Yeah, and then that B section was just kind of hanging out on 5, right? There we go. Yeah, and then that A is what finished it off.
Or rounding it off, hence the
rounding it off.
Binary.
Yeah.
Rounded binary form.
Mm-hmm.
Great, man.
Yeah. Now, when Beethoven used that in the actual Ode to Joy, it went on to do a whole lot of other stuff. But that basic melody is in a rounded binary form.
In our laboratory setting.
Yes, in our laboratory setting.
Very good.
So let's see.
Oh, hey, quick question for you. Actually, quick comment. We just kind of did that in the major key. Now, sometimes in a minor key, the B section is actually going to go to the relative major.
Often it wants to go to the relative major. Yeah.
You got anything you can pull out of your...
Let's see. Let's see if I can pull a Mahler and just do the minor key version of what I just played, more or less. Half
cadence. Second phrase.
And then we'll repeat.
Okay. Half cadence. Full cadence.
Back in the A, right?
That's the... So, a rounded binary form in a minor key.
In a minor key. Instead of hanging out on 5, we hung out on 3. We hung out on the relative major. And, we've seen this before, in modulation, it's easy for the major keys to modulate to the 5, and the minor keys very often will modulate to the relative major, So we've seen that kind of thing before.
Sure.
Yeah, it's still it remains a common sort of thread, whereas, 1 and 5 are really closely related in major, and 1 and 3 are really closely related in minor. So that kind of thing happens.
So far we've talked about simple binary.
Right.
Which is just A, B, right? Or AABB.
Right, yeah, where the A material doesn't come back at the end of the B material.
And then we talked about rounded binary, in which it does.
In which it does, yes.
It's rounded out.
Yeah. In addition to these, in addition to being simple and rounded, binaries are also sectional or continuous. Now, this little melody we've created for ourselves here is what I would call sectional. And we call it sectional because of the perfect authentic cadence that brings that A section to a sense of rest and finality. And then we'll go on to the 5. Yeah. And whatever I played. And then play B and then B. I call that sectional for that reason. And it is called sectional for that reason, because the A had this perfect authentic cadence in its original key that closed it off.
Okay.
And made an independent section. And B by itself, maybe not so much, but BA itself an independent section. So this is sectional binary.
Okay.
In addition to being rounded binary.
Aha.
So it is rounded sectional binary.
Ha.
Yes. Big words, right?
So it seems like what are some determining factors depends on where the cadences are and what kind of cadences happen.
Exactly. If I had ended A on a half cadence, for example, or actually, yes, if I had ended A on a half cadence, and then went on to B, and then blah blah blah, and then that final A at the end of the whole thing is going to need a perfect authentic. But if I had ended that one on that half cadence, then A itself is not independent. It
Nope.
is itself unresolved,
Yes,
right?
it
and
is
now there's
open.
it is open, exactly. And then we need this B section to complete our thought.
Yes.
Right? It can't even exist by itself. It's unfinished.
Okay, so when you got an open A, you call that a
Continuous.
Oh, we haven't brought that up yet, have we?
Well, we just did.
We just did. How about that? Okay, so continuous versus
sectional.
Okay, very good.
So when A is open, and A can be open by ending on a half cadence like that. A can be open because you ended on a perfect authentic cadence, but it was in the wrong key.
Uh-oh.
So if I did something crazy. And then went So perfect authentic cadence.
Sounds like a 4, isn't it?
It is a 4. Good job. Good ears.
Thank you.
Wrong key.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so it's not the 4 of A, it's
Yeah.
or whatever key we were in.
We're in
sorry.
C.
We're in C.
But yeah. So then we still are going to need this 5. And then 5 stuff. Right. And it actually made a great little progression, right? Because it made a 1, 4, 5, 1 progression in the long view, right? In the formal structure.
When you zoom out.
Yeah, the A section was 1, but then the A section ends on 4. That 4 then moves to 5, hangs out on 5, and then we come back to 1 at the very end.
Mm-hmm. Right? That's continuous.
Yeah, that is continuous. And that last A, after we've done in the B section, after we've done our digression, after we've hung out on 5, we come back to A, that will be an A prime. It will be modified so that it does end in the right key.
So it closes.
Yeah.
Or resolves.
Yeah.
Great. It's all coming together, man.
Yeah. So there's simple versus rounded binary.
Okay.
And that's all about whether or not that A material comes back.
Yes.
And then there is sectional versus continuous binary, which is all about whether that A section is open or closed, resolved or not.
Great.
So we can have rounded continuous binary. We can have rounded sectional binary. We can have simple continuous binary. Or we can have an actually really popular one, simple sectional binary.
Simple sectional binary.
Simple sectional binary, meaning that the A is closed, and then it doesn't come back at the end.
Okay, yeah.
So this is going to be a lot of like dance stuff.
Oh.
Right? Yeah, it's just simple sectional binary, which just does a thing and does another thing.
Was that the swallowtail jig?
Might have been.
Let's try it out and see.
Let's play the swallowtail jig and see.
Speaking of dance things.
Speaking of dance stuff.
A little jig. Okay, so this is an Irish thing here. A section.
A section. Closed.
Closed. And then it repeats.
And then it repeats.
B section.
B section. And it closed.
Was it? Yeah, closed, yeah.
Yeah. So we have an A that is closed. We have a B section in which the A material does not return to finish off the B section. The B section standing on its own here.
Yeah.
So by way of the first thing, the closed A section, we will call it sectional.
Mm-hmm.
Well, by way of the fact that there's two things, we'll call it binary.
Uh-huh.
By way of the A section being closed off, ending on a perfect authentic cadence, or ending on the tonic note, we will call that sectional. And by way of the fact that that A material does not return in the B material, we will call it simple.
Right, okay.
Simple, sectional, binary.
And I should point out that the B section, this is in a minor key, E minor. The B section did not go to G major.
Now,
But you might could have played G major on top of that, actually.
you might could, people break rules.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But it didn't go to 5, it didn't go to 3. It just kind of... But it's still considered a B section because it's a different feel, right?
Yeah, it's different material.
Yeah.
It's different musical material. Yeah, so simple sectional binary. Why don't you play the whole thing one more time through?
Okay, you want to talk to it?
Sans interruption. Let's just hear the thing.
Okay, the swallowtail jig.
Love it. Yay.
Hey,
Very nice.
That's my octave mandolin.
Yeah. And, the next time you're hearing Jeremy's band, and you're 3 or 4 beers in, you can start yelling that is simple sectional binary.
There's a lot of that in Irish music.
Oh, yeah.
Just about every reel and jig we do is that.
Yeah, well, it was very popular dance forms, those Baroque dance forms, and it kind of went all over Europe and things. So yeah. So there you have it. I think we've talked about all of this at this point.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to ask was balance. Did we say, is that the same thing as what we just did?
Balanced binary happens when it is the last phrase of A that is repeated.
Oh.
So when A is maybe not a parallel period, but a contrasting period, so that second phrase of A is very, very different. Mm-hmm. It will be that second phrase of A that comes in and finishes off B. And then,
okay. and
so then you'll call it rounded balanced binary.
So this little bit right here is at the end of both the A and the B section.
Yeah.
Does that count?
Yeah, maybe.
Because it happens real fast, of course.
Yeah. This kind of devolves into a matter of opinion sometimes, especially with dances. But
right.
But yeah, you could maybe make the argument that this is in fact a balanced sectional binary.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah. So balanced is less of a big deal to worry about, really. Not everybody makes the distinction between what part of A is coming in and out.
Right.
Or what part of A is finishing it off.
I think we've covered the binary form.
That is the binary form.
Mm-hmm.
In a nutshell.
This is not the last of the form and analysis episodes. There's going to be more to come.
Yeah,
so.
and this stuff can be confoundingly confusing, not because the concepts are difficult, but just, rounded simple versus simple sectional versus continuous sectional, which is a contradiction, right? It's like all of these words flying around, and what does all it mean? Mm-hmm. The important thing, if you want to label it right, and if you're a music student taking a form class or even a music theory 2 or 3 class, you're going to want to get the form right on your exam. If you want to get the form right and get the name of it right, just remember binary means 2 things mm-hmm. versus ternary, which means 3 things. We're about to talk about that.
Okay.
Sectional means that the A section is closed versus continuous means the A section is open.
In the case of a half cadence or something.
Right. Yeah, or
unresolved anything.
Yeah, or a modulation to the wrong key or something.
Right.
Rounded means the A material returns to finish off B and resolve B. Simple means it doesn't.
Yes. Very good.
That easy.
We'll have to say that again in the recap.
We will have to say all of that again in the recap, yeah. And it sounds so simple when you sit here and say it. But then you get into actually analyzing music, and it's like, well, does that qualify as A returning? Is this simple, or can I call this continuous? Because the A returns, but it's something weird happened to it, or the chord progressions from A return. Does that qualify as A, or yeah? So yeah, it gets less simple when you actually start applying it. But the basic concept is fairly easy.
So let's talk about the ternary form.
Let's talk about ternary. Like binary being 2 things, ternary is 3 things.
So far, so good.
Ternary has an A section, ternary has a B section, and then ternary has an A section. So ternary is A, B, A. And I can already hear you out there going, wait a minute, binary section had that.
Yeah.
Binary section had A, B, A.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we distinguish binary from ternary? What makes this ABA a binary form and this other ABA a ternary form? You will hear a lot of crazy stuff. You hear people say it's because of the repeats. If B and A are repeated, then it's binary, and then if B is repeated and then A is repeated, then it's No, wrong. It is not because of repeats. Repeats do not really dictate form.
Right, as we discussed.
As we discussed. And you'll hear all sorts of other stuff about, how much the B material is dependent or independent on A, how much the musical material differs, and all of that is extraordinarily subjective. Subjective enough to be close to useless, in my personal opinion.
To be not a hard, fast rule.
To be not a hard, fast rule and lead to too many dumb arguments. So, here we go. What makes it a ternary form is the A section is closed. It cadences in its key perfectly, or at least authentically. There's an authentic cadence in its home key, in its original key, and that ends this A section.
Completely independent musical thought.
Completely independent musical thought. B is also closed. It's usually in a different key, but rather than just kind of hanging out on 5, is a thing that is in that dominant key. If we were in C major for the A section, the B section will be in G major, and we'll have a whole melody. We'll have a parallel period, or even a whole little rounded binary in of itself that is the B section. And then it will close off. It will come to an authentic cadence in that key.
In the key of the 5 key in this case. The key of G.
In the 5 key. In the key that B started in.
So we're not talking about this 5 resolving back to C, the 1.
No, we're talking about the G resolving to G. We're talking about the B resolving in the key that B started in.
Its just own independent musical thought.
Own independent thing. And it is often very, very different musical material from what happened in A. And then we'll have that A complete thing, B complete thing, and A comes back the complete thing again.
Okay.
Sans repeats. If there were any repeats in the original A section, we won't play those repeats in that final third A section of ternary form.
Okay.
But other than that, no difference.
And would the second time A comes around you're saying it would be the same material?
Same material.
But maybe not repeated.
Usually not repeated.
Usually not repeated. Okay.
Usually not repeated. Yeah. And that's what makes it ternary. Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like it's a matter of them all being closed.
All of them being
closed.
The
A having been closed in the first place.
Yes.
Coming back again, of course, it's going to be closed because it's the same stuff.
Yeah, right.
B is closed.
Yeah,
okay.
and you can say, but, A is closed in binary. A is closed in sectional binary. Yes, but B is not. B is dependent on A coming back, right?
Yeah, because it goes to the 5.
Yeah. But then you might say, well, in simple sectional binary, there is no A coming back. Yes, exactly. And that is just 2 things. There is no hint of A. The piece ends and A never came back in any way, right?
Yeah.
As soon as you tack another A onto that simple sectional binary, you have ternary.
I think that's clicking.
Yeah.
I think that's clicking.
Yeah, so just to give a brief musical example of a small ternary form, if I stuck with the same melody I came up with earlier. And then I'll repeat it. What the heck?
That's A.
Yeah. And then B section. Repeat B. Not exactly, because I don't remember. And then back to A. No repeat.
Okay.
Ternary form.
Ternary form.
And you hear how that B was this whole thing.
Yeah.
Not just different musical material, but ended on perfect authentic cadences that closed itself off.
So there wouldn't be any would there be any circumstances where the B would be open? on a ternary form?
In my personal opinion,
Uh-huh.
if the B is open, it is not ternary form. It is rounded binary.
Okay. Very
Simple
good.
as that. When you study form in depth, you get into things like the connective material between A and B and things like that. And so, like I said, in actually applying it can be a little bit stickier than just listing out the terms.
Mm-hmm.
But as a general conceptual rule, if B is open, then it is binary, because that B is requiring something else to resolve it, right? It's requiring that A to resolve it. So your B section is really just BA, B that needed A to resolve.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if B is closed, then your B is its own independent thing. And that's ternary. A, B, A.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That
Nice, huh?
I don't see where there's any point in making that any more confusing. Because that was actually pretty simple.
Yeah, like I said, it's simple when you say it.
Yeah, simple when you say it. It's not simple when I read it in some textbook.
Well, that's what you have me for.
That's what I have you for.
Right, Tom?
Everybody, Tom. Everybody say, thank you, Matt.
Oh, stop.
Well, we earlier also when we were talking, you played me an example of a compound ternary form.
Right, yeah. I think I played, and I'll, if you guys want to go find a good recording of it, there's plenty. I played the first of Schubert's Moment Musico. Moment Musico number 1 in C major, which is a classic example of a compound ternary.
Now, what can you give us the lettering arrangement that would result in a compound
the
ternary?
TLDR version of this is that with a compound ternary, within each section of the ternary, the A section, the B section, and then the A section again, there is within itself a small other form, usually some small binary form.
Right.
Usually, and in that example, there was a small rounded binary. So there was like capital A, and then within A, there was a little tiny A, B, A prime. There was a rounded binary.
Capital A being the royal A section.
Yeah, the big section we're in. And then we have a B section, of our ternary form. Different musical material, different key, different, but within that, there was also a tiny little rounded binary form. And then the A section came back with its tiny little rounded binary form, and there were no repeats in that binary form.
Right. Okay, so you have... Go ahead.
And that was compound ternary.
Okay.
The third movement of most symphonies from the classical era will be compound ternary. So Haydn symphonies, Mozart symphonies, Beethoven symphonies, up until later in his life anyway. Most of those third movements will be what is known as minuet and trio. Mm-hmm. And minuet and trio is just a specific type of compound ternary form, where the minuet is the A section, the trio is the B section, and it's played on fewer instruments and in a different key, and then the minuet comes back at the end.
Okay.
ABA, compound ternary.
Okay, so if we visualize this, the song, the piece you're talking about had actually, within the A section, we had A and then A prime. Oh, sorry, A and then B.
Yeah, A, and then A repeated, B, A prime repeated.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was the A section.
That was the A section.
And then the B section, we kind of called it C and D, didn't we?
We called it C and D, so C repeated, D, C prime repeated. And that's just to distinguish that small rounded binary in the B section from the small rounded binary that was the A section.
So basically, it just sounds like what it is. Compound means within the form, within the A section, there's actually another little mini form kind of thing.
Yeah,
happening.
they're actually little mini forms within the bigger sections.
Okay, that's easy enough.
Easy enough. Yeah.
Okay, let me ask you about this da capo aria thing. Is that something you want to bring up?
Da capo aria was it was a great way in opera, in early Baroque opera specifically, and well, not specifically, it carried on into Mozart and stuff. It was a great way to sort of have a de facto rounded binary form, because it would be an aria that someone would sing, and we would sing this A form, right? And, maybe the A would be closed or open, just depending. And then we would have this B part where the soloist kind of was showing off a little bit, right? Still doing a lot of the same stuff, kind of hanging out on 5 or whatever, but showing off a lot. And then da capo would mean back to the head, back to the top. So she would sing the A section again.
And then the composer would just write DC.
Would just write DC.
And not have to write the whole thing over again.
Right. Yeah. Meaning da capo.
Da capo.
Hence the phrase da capo aria.
From the head, of the head.
Of the head.
Of the head.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Jazz people, the leader will just catch everybody's attention and tap his head. Pat his own head. And it means back to the head.
Killer.
Yeah.
Killer. I think that in bluegrass, you actually stick your leg out.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. All right, now, okay. So the only thing we have left to talk about today would be variation forms.
Theme and variations.
Okay.
Yeah, theme and variations. So this was it was a neat parlor trick. This was a great way for piano virtuosos like Mozart or Beethoven to show off exactly how good they could be on the piano. Because what they would do would be they would play the theme, which would usually be some short rounded binary, much like the theme I've been playing this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then they would commence to playing any number of variations on that theme, where they played the same theme, but they varied it in numerous and often amazing kind of ways, ways designed to show off how good they were. And it became sort of a form. So like Beethoven's Fifth Symphony Second Movement is a theme and variations for orchestra.
So they might change the rhythms.
They might change the rhythms.
They might change the key.
They might change the key. They may change the mode. There'd be a token minor key variation in there somewhere.
They might keep a similar contour and maybe do the same thing a third above, or I don't know. I mean,
yeah, they may do that. The contour, the cadence structure, open and close, and all that stuff. That would all be the same every time.
So it's more in the melodic and
more in the melodic, yeah. So you guys are going to realize what kind of a pianist I'm not. But yeah, this thing. And then we had that A section, and then we had the B section, and then I had the A section. Yeah, and then that would be my theme, and then variation 1. Oh crap.
So you played the whole thing.
You played the whole thing, yeah, the whole rounded binary, and then variation 1. And then we would repeat that. We'd go to the B section, still varying. And then play the whole, and then finish it off. And then the next variation, might be the token minor key. Or whatever, and they would do stuff and just show off their piano thing, and it became a thing. And there's no limit to the number of variations. They really are trying to show off. And when it becomes a form, not just a show-off piece, there's still really, you can get to variation 11, variation 12, where you're varying the counterpoint, you're varying the instruments, you're varying just whatever you can think of to vary this. But a lot of times. It's like a contrapuntal variation. Like you're adding ornamental notes, you're adding neighbor notes and passing tones and all that good crap.
Which is what you were just doing,
which was attempting to.
The embellishment, the ornamental embellishment.
Ornamental embellishments and stuff like that. In the traditional theme and variations, they were sectional variations, meaning they played it, stopped, and played the next variation. Played the theme, stopped, next variation, play that, and it comes to an authentic cadence. Variation 2. Authentic cadence, variation 3, etc., etc. Whereas continuous, a la Beethoven's Fifth Symphony Movement 2, is where it kind of just flowed from one variation to the next. There could be some connective material, that sort of kept them moving along. It wasn't that overt stop.
Oh, okay. Huh.
Yeah. If you listen to pieces like Brahms has a piece called Variations on a Theme by Haydn. This kind of thing was popular a while, so Brahms took this theme that Haydn had originally composed and made a whole bunch of variations on it, to sort of show off how good a composer he was. Benjamin Britten wrote a piece for orchestra called A Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra. We may have mentioned it before.
I don't know.
Yeah. Benjamin Britten wrote A Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra, and it was designed to be a pedagogical device to teach, young people, please excuse the patronization, he was old, to teach, quote unquote, young people all the different instruments in the orchestra. So he takes a theme by a composer named Bizet, and takes that theme and varies it largely instrumentally. So in the string section, in the percussion section, in the strings and the winds, and to show the different
variations.
Variations, yeah. So there you go.
Great.
Time for a recap.
Time for the recap.
All right.
We started off kind of recapping. Which we won't do right now.
Yeah, recapping episode 20 on form.
Yeah, and then episode 19 on
cadences. Right.
Check those out. Now, binary form.
Binary form essentially means there are two things, right? There is an A section, which is often itself one of those forms from episode 20, like a parallel period or a contrasting period or a double period or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is a second thing, a B section, which might just be B, just completely different, and it ends and is done, or B might kind of be dependent on the return of some A material to finish it off.
So that is, so far, rounded and simple binary.
Rounded and simple. Now, in addition to this, binaries can also be sectional or continuous. A sectional binary, the A will be closed, meaning it comes to a satisfying conclusion, an authentic cadence, in its key, in its original key, right? And then the B is usually left open, meaning it doesn't do that. And the B is often kind of nebulous. It'll hang around on 5, or if you're in a minor key, it'll hang around on 3, and then sort of need A to come back if it's rounded. But in a sectional, the A will be closed off and finish its sort of musical thought before it goes on to B and then B to A. In continuous, that does not happen. A will either end on a half cadence, even feeling unresolved, feeling open, as we call it.
Yeah.
Or it will modulate and then end in an authentic cadence, but in the wrong key.
Mm-hmm.
And in so doing, also still be kind of left open, kind of left unresolved, and need the B and what will now be the A prime section to finish it off and close in the right key.
Very good.
Yeah. So, rounded continuous binary. A returns at the end of B, and the first A section is closed and is binary. There are two things. Mm-hmm. There are two cadences.
Right.
Yeah, two major cadences. Simple sectional binary. A happens, it's closed. B happens, it's its own thing, no return of A. B is also closed and satisfyingly in its key.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, play with these definitions.
Yeah. Experiment yourself. Okay. So is that all the binary?
That's binary.
Is that really all binary?
Mm-hmm. It's really simple.
Simple. What about balanced binary?
Balanced binary, technically, is when it's the last phrase of A, the last phrase of that period or something, that comes back to finish off B.
Okay. So it kind of sounds like a little bit like rounded.
It kind of is. Not everybody makes that distinction.
Okay. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on to ternary.
Ternary, A is closed, has its own satisfying cadence in its own key. B is in a different key, usually 5 or 3 or whatever, different musical material, is closed, has its own satisfying section in its own key, and then A comes back, and the only difference is there won't be any repeats.
Okay, so to go ahead and settle the score. We talked about this earlier.
Yes.
And I was YouTubing and Googling and trying to find some examples of ternary forms. And somebody, possibly erroneously, or possibly oversimplifying, said that Twinkle, twinkle. Maybe E. You would give me some chords, actually?
Yeah. Let's see if I can do that.
Okay.
So,
So twinkle, twinkle. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Repeats. That's closed. That's closed, right?
mm-hmm. That is closed.
Then the B section. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that right there is the reason this is not ternary.
Does that feel satisfied to you?
No. This is the end of the B section, and it is open.
Yeah. And then we have to go back to the A section, don't we?
So that was the reason right there at the end of the B section. If that B section had been closed, yeah. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, then it would have been ternary.
Ah.
But it's left open. It is rounded binary.
Twinkle, twinkle.
Or the alphabet song.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right. Same difference, right?
Yep.
Okay, that's great, man. That cleared up a lot for me because I was really actually having a difficult time with that one.
Yeah,
rounded binary versus ternary.
Yeah. That's a challenge area for lots of people actually.
And then we mentioned that compound ternary
is a ternary in which the A section will have its own small little form. It will itself be a small rounded binary, and then the B section will do all the stuff with B. It's supposed to be in a different key and everything, but have its own little form of itself.
It's kind of like subforms within the form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we get into larger forms, we find that this is kind of a thing. There is an expanded rounded binary where A is not just a period, but A is a rounded binary, and then B is a thing, and then yeah. It's fun.
I'm going to try not to bust out my counterpoint attitude with some of this form and analysis.
And then there's sonata form, right?
Oh gosh.
And then there's rondo, and yeah. So, but we'll get to all of that.
All in due time. And then finally, the only thing we have left to mention is the variations, right?
Right.
Did we miss anything on ternary, or is that pretty much?
That's pretty much it.
Okay.
Yeah, right. And variations, just theme and variations being you just play a theme, and the theme is usually a binary of some kind, like a rounded binary or something. And then you just continue to play variations on that theme. You'll play it over and over again, with more ornamentation or faster, or with the melody and the bass, or or in a different meter, or a different or in a minor key or something.
Or a simplified version, or a complicated version.
Yeah.
Slower, faster.
Yeah.
There's so many ways you can vary music.
So many indeed.
Before it's not the same piece of music anymore. I wonder how far they let it go, actually.
Pretty far.
Where does it? Yeah.
Pretty far. Pretty far.
Y'all play with your own variations. We're gonna mess with some variations ourselves. Maybe it'll be in the theme music. Who knows? Okay, Matt, we did it again.
We did.
We kind of made sense of something that was completely kind of crazy to me for a little bit, and now it's all kind of working a bit better now.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Yeah, so thank you, and your theory brain, which is back up and running, it appears.
Well, mostly, and thank you and your theory brain for being engaged and being and for coming back, and thank our audience and their theory brains.
Yes, thank you, and you thank your theory brains,
and you thank your theory brains,
and use your theory brains.
Thank you, theory brain.
There's a lot more to say about forms. As they grow bigger and more complex. So keep on listening. We want to thank you again for your continuing support and feedback. If you want to share with us or need clarification, You can message us on social media or email us at info@musicstudent101.com.